A question I get quite a bit is like, well, how many sharks are there? And that's a great question. If I throw it out to the audience, people might say 20, maybe 100. And then, then I'll get some people just throwing out any kind of numbers because no one really knows. Well, right now there's about 1,265 species of sharks. And that includes the rays, the flat sharks, and the ghost sharks. Now, and the question I frequently get is, well, have we discovered everything? No. And as I said, I just had a new species published today. But nearly 25% of all chondrichthyans, which is the cartilaginous fishes, have been named just in the past 15 years, with the Moss Landing Marine Lab's Pacific Shark Research Center contributing about 16% of all of these new species that have been described. In fact, we're the second leading institution in the world in discovering and naming new species of sharks since 2003. As I say, more new species have been discovered in the past 15 years than the previous 235 years. And you see by this chart here, between 1758 and 1899, we had on average about 3 new species described a year over that 141-year period. But if you look at from 1900 to 1979, we had on average 5 new species named. But since 1980 to 2019, we've had over 11 new species of sharks named per year. And just in the last 3 years, since really the pandemic started, we've been averaging about 22 new species over the last 3 years. So it's not slowing down. We're continuing to find new species of sharks. So you think like, well, that's really cool, Dave. You go out and you find all these like really new sharks. And that's kind of neat just from a discovery standpoint. But well, why should we care? Well, the reason we care is because what if these things disappeared? Now, there's whole organizations dedicated, saving lions and gorillas, polar bears, elephants and other terrestrial species. And if these things disappeared, people would be really upset about that. Who's ever heard of a honeycomb cat shark besides me? Now, this is a species that we know used to be very common off the east coast of South Africa and southern Mozambique. In the 50s and 60s, we have records that confirm that. But since 1972, we haven't seen one of these. 50 years now since we've last seen one of these honeycomb cat sharks, despite intensive surveys in the area where they occur. The interesting thing is this was not even formally named until 2006, 34 years after this shark disappeared, which is incredible to think about. Another species I use which is sort of, I always call like sort of the panda bear or the lost shark world, is the Pondicherry shark. Now, this was a species that was discovered and named in 1839. But again, we haven't seen this species since the 1970s. And for all we know, this species may very well be extinct. And just one of the things, a little more of my background is I've been involved with the IUCN Shark Specialist Group now for over 20 years. And I've been on the executive committee for over a decade. And so I spent a lot of time working with these conservation groups on these different species. So you think like, well, these are just 2 examples, but I could give you a whole bunch of these examples. But the thing is why these lost sharks are important is because these are the proverbial canaries in the coal mine and may be a precursor to what's going on in the world around us. I mean, I've gone to villages in different parts of the world and documented over the last 30, 35 years changes in what they're catching in these things. And it doesn't look good because a lot of the coastal species are disappearing and they're having to fish deeper to find new species. Then I go, man, Eureka, that's a new species. More times than not, I'm like, man, I think that might be new, but I'm not sure.